way too young an age, and that way they never ever achieve their potential as well, and that can also lead to problems with their feet and their locomotion and a whole range of other issues as well.
With farmers aiming for a specific target of say 0.8 kilos per day daily live weight gain, what sort of consideration should he have in mind?
The amount of feed that's presented to the animal is probably the biggest issue. And really good grazing conditions, these animals will graze 10, 12, 13 hours a day. And they should be able to, in that period of time, take in their full voluntary intake with kind of 300 kilo animals. You would be expecting it to be eating 6.5 kilograms a day dry matter intake. And good grazing conditions, they will be able to do that. But sometimes in the winter time, they're not able to do that. There's not food in front of them all the time. So your dry matter intake is the kind of first thing that you've really got to take into account, and then matching that dry matter intake to their nutritional requirements.
Variations in silage can affect feed quality, so how important is it for producers to have their silage analysed?
It's absolutely vital that they get a chemical analysis done. There's a certain amount you can tell from looking at it. You know, you can see the amount of seed head that's there in proportion to the amount of leaf. You can give it a right good squeeze and see the amount of water that comes out it. If it's absolutely running water, then it's probably 20–22% dry matter. If you're having difficulty getting water out, it's probably nearer 25. If you can't get any water out it, and when you open your hand, it stays in the ball shape that you've squeezed it into, it's probably nearer about 27% dry matter. And after you've squeezed it and get no water out it and you open your hand and it springs open, it's probably over 30% dry matter. So you can get a reasonable assessment in its dry matter just by handling it. But the actual chemical analysis, the amount of energy, the amount of protein that's in it, you've absolutely no way of coming close to as close as you need to be without having it actually analysed. So if you're feeding that in the course of the winter and trying to achieve consistent weight gains in the cattle in the course of the winter, then that first cut was going to need about 3.5 kilograms of concentrate fed alongside it to get your 0.8 of a kilogram of live weight gain, whereas the second cut needed less than a kilo to achieve the same live weight gain. So there's a huge difference in cost involved in that. That second cut silage getting fed alongside a kilo of blend would probably have been saving you something about 27 to 30 pence a day, depending on how expensive the blend was. 27 pence a day, 0.8 of a kilogram a day, 34 pence a kilo live weight gain. It would have added up to an extra £40 in the course of the winter. And if you're turning out a 400 kilo steer in the spring of the year to sell it, that one that was fed in the low quality silage would have needed to have returned an extra 10 pence a kilo live weight at the market in order for you to recoup your money.
For many years, Ian Crawford has farmed Wester Kinloch near Blairgowrie. Recently, though, he's been working with Peter Drysdale, a local contract farmer. One of the main enterprises is a breeding herd of 130 cows, 90 of which are spring calvers, with the rest calving in the autumn. And with that level of commitment, Peter is confident about the future of the beef sector.
Well, I'm very optimistic about the beef job. I think it's going to be one of the better things in farming, and I'm quite convinced I do other things too, and it's not coming near the target of the beef job anyway, no.
But it hasn't all been plain sailing. A couple of years ago, he had a problem with scour in his calves.
The last 2 years we've had quite a bit of problem with scour, and last year was worse. And the calves would be all right for about the first 10–12 days of their life. Then they would just, the scour would start, then maybe some would be passing a bit of blood. So we got the vet in, Gillian, to do some samples, and that's when we found out it was a rotavirus.
Gillian, when Peter called you in, what was your course of action?
Basically, we attended as best as we could to the sick calves, but the main approach was to get samples away to the laboratory and find out exactly what the organism was that was involved.
So it was very important to establish the cause?
Absolutely.
So you established the cause, so what did you do after that?
Well, there really wasn't very much we could do for the cows that were still to calve within that calving period. It was really a little bit too late to vaccinate, but we did advise that vaccination programme be put into place for all calves that were still a distance away from calving, that we could get the immunity going in time for them calving down.
And vaccinating for?
Rotavirus in this instance. That's what came up. But the rotavirus vaccination actually has other things in it as well, which is an added bonus that you're getting protection against coronavirus and the K99 antigen of E. coli as well.
Right, Peter, so you called Gillian in and the diagnosis was rotavirus, so did you lose some more calves in that season?
Yes, we lost 1 or 2, yes.
So how many in total did you lose?
We lost about 6, 7 last year with it.
And could you put a sort of a cost on?
Well, I would say it'd be £4,000. We usually keep the calves till maybe 12, 13 months of age, then sell them as forward stores. And plus the fact a lot of the other calves weren't doing quite so well, so it was pulling down the price of them too. They were not thriving as well.
With calf scour, the external symptoms are very obvious, but what's going on inside the calf?
Yes, the actual gut of the calf, particularly rotavirus, is being very badly damaged. The virus actually stunts the villi, which are the finger-like projections that allow absorption of fluids and food. And once these are damaged, they're quite often permanently damaged, and that's why even calves that survive rotavirus may still continue to not do well and will often end up not finishing well even later on.
So you're now vaccinating against rotavirus, so how are your calves doing now?
They're doing very well. As you can see today, we've 40 autumn calvers here and there's 30 calved, and we've got over 100% calving, and we've not been any scour at all this year, so it's a fast improvement.
And what about your spring calves, how are they done?
They've done pretty well too. We're in about 93% there, so that's up from 88, so that's a good improvement, no?
Now obviously it's cost you some money and some hassle to vaccinate against rotavirus. Would you believe that the returns have justified that cost?
Yeah, certainly it has. We only spent about £1,300 and we've maybe 4,000 or 5,000 better off at the end of the day, and plus for somebody looking after the stock and that, there's not been a problem of getting help to bring them in and things like that. We've managed to do it on our own, no?
Gillian, when you established what it was rotavirus here, and you did that quite quickly, but what advice would you have for farmers with scour in their stock, not just calves but older cattle as well?
Oh, any scour at all, the most useful thing to do is to take a sample and let the laboratory or ourselves have a look at it. If it's older cattle, it might be worm eggs we're looking at, which we can sometimes look at for ourselves, or alternatively for screening for viruses it needs to go to the laboratory, but getting the samples, and lots of them. Sometimes you won't get a diagnosis on just 1 or 2 samples, sometimes you have to keep putting more in until you get the specific agent that's causing the problem.
So what's the correct procedure for a farmer? What does he actually have to do to get a good sample for you?
Well, it needs to be very fresh, preferably, if possible, actually taken out of the back passage of the calf or caught as it's actually passing scour or faeces. Usually the vet can supply you with a specimen container and gloves, and it's a case of collect them, get them into us as fresh as possible, with as much information about the animal as possible, including its age, particularly its age, because in fact the different examination is required for what we call a true neonate, a true neonatal calf, which is kind of up to 10 days of age, and the slightly older ones in which the sort of age group that Peter was seeing the problems in, the sort of 10 to 14 days plus. It's a slightly different examination.
And how quickly should they get that sample into you?
Oh, as soon as possible. As soon as they see any form of debilitating scour, and once they've collected it, get it into us fresh, and preferably not on a Friday night because it's going to sit in the post or in our office until Monday morning. And
so what have you learned from this rotavirus incident that you had on the farm?
Well, I've learned it's very time consuming, and it's very distressing to see a lot of calves lying about not sucking and on drips, and not many of them making it at the end of the day.
I think I have a better knowledge and understanding of what they're doing in their everyday practices, and therefore I'm in a slightly better position as to advise them as what they can be doing, what they are doing right, and if hopefully not too much wrong, but I can help to tweak and help them that way.
Peter, do you feel now that you've almost got a fairy godmother?
Exactly, yes. An older one.